Remembering Valmiki Thapar friend, fighter, force of nature I come into the peace of wild things woe do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water. And I feel above me the dayblind stars waiting with their light. For a time I rest in the grace of the world, and am free. In the quiet sanctuary of Wendell Berry's lines from the peace of wild things, I often find solace. Today, those words return with a new weight, because the man who taught so many of us to seek that peace in the wild is no more. Valmiki Thapar, India's most passionate advocate for the tiger and the soul of Ranthambore itself, has passed away. The news hit hard. For me, it's not just the loss of a conservation icon, it's the loss of a friend of Ranthambore, a place I hold closest to my heart. A fierce voice gone quiet. A presence impossible to replace. Valmiki wasn't just India's tiger man. He was Ranthambore. Not just in a symbolic way, he lived, breathed, and fought for it every single day. Through the awe he inspired in forest guards and guides, in villagers and visitors. Through the stories that clung to the park like mist of Mockley, nor, genius and of the man who gave us a reason to care. Valmiki started young, in the 1970s. Back then, Ranthambore was a fragile wilderness on the brink. What Valmiki saw wasn't just a threat, he was a possibility. He immersed himself in the jungle, studying tigers not just as a researcher but as someone who understood their soul. He watched, he listened, and he wrote it all down: articles, books, and documentaries that brought India's tigers into living rooms and policy rooms alike. Over the span of 4 decades, he authored a score of books on wildlife and conservation, including Tiger the Ultimate Guide and Tiger Fire the Ladder, an anthology of India's long and layered relationship with the big cat. He presented and co-produced several acclaimed documentaries for the BBC and National Geographic, such as Land of the Tiger, which aired internationally and educated millions on India's wildlife. He was appointed to India's National Wildlife Board and served on countless conservation committees. In 1987, he founded the Ranthambore Foundation, an NGO that pioneered community conservation and integrated livelihood support with environmental protection, a model that has since been emulated across protected areas in India. Thapar wasn't just documenting wildlife, he was shaping the national conversation around it. His work bridged the gap between field science, policy, and public imagination in a way few had before him. And Valmiki didn't stop there. He challenged the system. Took on poachers, confronted politicians, and questioned bureaucrats. He wasn't afraid to make enemies if it meant protecting the wild. His roar often echoed louder in Delhi's corridors than in the jungle itself. Valmiki saw conservation not as a job or a science but as a moral calling. A duty. I sighted my first tiger at the age of 9 in Corbett Park. At 23, it became my obsession, as watching it in the magical setting of Ranthambore mesmerized me like nothing else. Since then, I have served the tiger and will do so till I die, Valmiki once told my friend Ina Puri during a rare interview. That devotion shaped everything he did. When I began working on Ranthambore Diary 9 Days, 9 Cubs, it was Valmiki's shadow that loomed large. His way of seeing golf, telling stories that made the wild feel personal, shaped my own journey. The very fact that I could witness and write about 9 cubs in 9 days is a tribute to what he helped build, a park where tigers still thrive because someone had the vision to fight for them. In many ways, Ranthambore Diary is rooted in Valmiki's legacy. Every photograph I used, every moment I paused to observe rather than chase spectacle, carried echoes of his voice, that insistence on respect, patience, and deep listening. His writings taught me to see not just the beauty of a tiger but also its context: the rustle of the grass, the alarm call of the langur, the tension in the air before a cub emerges from the thicket. Valmiki had shown us that documenting wildlife is about intimacy, ethics, and stewardship. For his part, Valmiki never stopped being astonished. In his book, Living with Tigers, he writes, "I had never seen a tiger chasing a deer in the water. Ganges didn't falter and charged in as sheets of water splashed skywards from the flight of the somber and the tiger's pursuit of the deer. He missed, but what a spectacle he had created! What I had seen was so intense that it was like being witness to a theatrical extravaganza." That sense of wonder never left Valmiki. Nor did his conviction that to conserve tigers was to conserve something deeper, a shared inheritance. Ranthambore, to me, has never been just a park. It is a living narrative stitched together by decades of watchfulness, with Valmiki as its most committed chronicler. Without his tireless advocacy, his fight against poachers and policy lapses, and his insistence on science and storytelling going hand in hand, the park would never have become what it is today. But Valmiki wasn't just about Ranthambore. He advised prime ministers, served on key wildlife boards, and helped shape Project Tiger into what it became, both through his recommendations and his critiques. He wanted better protection but also smarter tourism. He called out the glorified safari culture and pushed for regulation, always keeping the tiger at the center. Valmiki didn't romanticize the jungle. He talked of vanishing forests, of bureaucratic apathy, of conservation losing its soul to selfies and sound bites. And yet, he kept fighting. Kept believing. I remember conversations where his eyes would light up while describing a tigress teaching her cubs to hunt. And others where his voice would drop, heavy with grief, recounting lost forests or failed policies. He was never detached. That was his greatest strength and, sometimes, his burden. Valmiki's passing leaves behind more than silence. It leaves a legacy of truth-telling, of fierce love, of action. The best way to honor him isn't through grand words. It's by listening to the jungle, and acting when it calls. I had no shortage of stories and anecdotes about him, thanks to another tiger and Harmendra Kandal who kept his spirit alive in every tale he told. Swipe left for next video. The tiger has lost its most passionate guardian. But the trail Valmiki blazed still runs deep. And we must follow. My last email exchange with him was in September. I had invited him to a small gathering in Ranthambore. He graciously replied, saying he would be out of India, visiting his son, who was studying in London. Even in that brief exchange, his warmth came through. That will stay with me. His legacy. A columnist and author, Sandeep Bhutoria is passionate about the environment, education, and wildlife conservation. Views expressed in the above piece are personal and solely those of the author. They do not necessarily reflect News 18's views. Latest blogs.